Good morning, happy Thursday. You are listening to the second episode of the Sports Corner, live on 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. I'm your host, Sebastian Stratton, and joined alongside my always amazing co-host, Mr. Nick Supa. And Nick, there's a lot to talk about in the sports world, a lot that we're going to get to, but before we get into any of that, how are you doing today?
Sebastian, as always, it is great to be here, man. Happy Thursday, everybody, and we're going to put on a great show for you today here on the Sports Corner.
Absolutely, and I think it's only right, as in last show, if we start off. Last show we talked about how we were going to preview the conference championships. This time, we have our Super Bowl matchup set. The conference championship games have played its course, and we have our matchup. In Super Bowl 59, next Sunday in New Orleans, it will be the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles, a rematch of 2 years ago in Super Bowl 57. But let's get into the recap of these matchups, and I think it's only right if we start off with the first game on last Sunday's schedule, which is the Eagles versus Commanders. And I'm going to be honest, I underestimated this Eagles team. And as a Steelers fan, I remember watching them play the Eagles early on in the season. Well, later on, towards the back half. And we have just seen this continuity develop with this Eagles offense, which is a main reason why Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is in the running for the last head coaching job in the NFL with the Saints. There is just such a rhythm with this offense. There doesn't seem to be any real weakness on this team, besides kicker, which we'll get to, as Jake Elliott is 1 for 8 on field goals that are 50-plus yards, which we'll preview next week when we look at the Super Bowl matchup. But, Nick, talk about complete dominance. What did you see in that matchup?
Literally complete dominance. Oh, my God. I had a feeling going into this matchup the Eagles were going to become victorious at the end of this one. I did not see them scoring 55 points, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think is the most points scored in a conference championship game in the NFL, I guess since the Super Bowl era, but it's incredible. I mean, 55-23, Saquon Barkley was out of his mind in that game. 3 touchdowns, including the first play of the game, is absolutely insane, doing what he does all year round. And as I mentioned, the first play of the game, a 60-yard rush, 60 yards, and he had two rushing touchdowns against the Rams that were also 60-plus yards. So he's having one heck of a season, that's for sure. And then, of course, you got Jalen Hurts, who also had a pretty good game completion-wise, as he was 20 for 28 with 246 passing yards and a touchdown with no interceptions. So almost a flawless game for Jalen Hurts. This offense, the offensive line has just been outstanding at protecting Hurts. And as you mentioned, Sebastian, the defense has just been perhaps one of the best, if not the best, in the league.
Most definitely. And I think a lot of people and a lot of criticism on Jalen Hurts is that he has a super team around him. But that doesn't take away from what Hurts has accomplished. If anything, it's more of a credit to Eagles general manager Howie Roseman for building up this team, working with Nick Sirianni, to put a squad out there that is ready to compete every year. When you have a top 5 O-line and you have weapons such as A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, all you have to do is let Hurts make those passes. And we've seen that. He completed 20 of 28 passes for 246 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions for a 9th straight game. So this isn't a game where he really shocked the world in a performance we weren't expecting. He's been doing this. He's shown this consistency. And of course it's going to be overshadowed when you have the best running back in football in Saquon Barkley. But he's been very good. He's played very well for this team, and he's quietly having a terrific postseason. He's completed 70% of his passes for 505 yards with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 105 passer rating. So, Nick, do you think it's fair that this criticism is on Jalen Hurts, or should we be giving more credit to Eagles general manager Howie Roseman? I mean, he's worked very well so far with this squad, and he's really built up everybody on the defense. You draft Cooper DeJean. You have Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith on that defense, Quinyon Mitchell, just a plethora of players to go along, and they really look unbeatable. But of course, you can't doubt the two-time defending champs, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh yeah.
But what do you think? Is the criticism fair on Jalen Hurts?
Definitely not. I mean, the guy. I mean, he may not be, as you mentioned, he may not be no Patrick Mahomes or anything like that. But I mean, he has a full staff of offense and Pro Bowlers that are on this team that have been helping him out. And it's not like if you have these kind of receivers like A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith, they're tremendous players. So you don't, even if you do like a quick little dump pass, they can get 10 plus yards of running. And then of course giving it into the hands of Saquon Barkley, I mean, the name right there, you don't have to say anything else. So I don't think they should be criticizing him. The guy helped. I mean, Jalen Hurts has brought them to their second Super Bowl in 3 years. I believe it's the 5th overall in Eagles history. So, I mean, this is incredible, especially for Eagles fans. I'm sure they're going out of their mind, as we witnessed on social media. Yeah, no, I don't think there should be any criticism towards Jalen Hurts. And shout out to the Eagles general manager for all these incredible moves to help make this team such an incredible Super Bowl contender.
No doubt. And I think that we see how the Eagles were just able to take over from the beginning. And we saw Jaden Daniels, the rookie out of LSU, the former second overall pick. He did play well, but this Eagles team was just too much on both sides of the ball. It really was. And I think that Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, they know that they need to improve this team in the offseason, because this Eagles team doesn't seem as if they're going away anytime soon. And a guy that we were looking out for, a key to the game from the Washington defense, Frankie Louvu, he played well, but it wasn't enough. And if your impact doesn't ultimately lead to a victory, it's going to be overshadowed. But Louvu did play well, 4 total tackles, 2 solo, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. But looking at this Washington team, Nick, in this game, what went wrong? Is there something else that they could have done on either side of the ball, or was this Eagles team just too dominant?
I think this Eagles team, as I mentioned it last week, they're just too dominant for this Washington team. Obviously, we saw in the regular season, Washington did beat the Eagles, actually. They scored 36 points on them. It was a tight game. But now you're talking about the playoffs to go to the Super Bowl, and you're putting the ball in the hands of a rookie. He has no experience in the playoffs. And could he have done it? Definitely. I mean, the playoffs, you just don't know. But against this kind of an Eagles team, I definitely would have said that the Eagles would have been winning this game for sure. But I mean, Jaden Daniels, he didn't have that bad of a game, though. As a matter of fact, he had more passing yards than Jalen Hurts. He was 29 for 48 with 255 yards, and Hurts had 246 yards. Daniels did also throw a touchdown and an interception. He also had 48 rushing yards, but it wasn't enough. At one point, it did seem like it was a close matchup. Even in the second quarter, at one point it was 27-12, which, it wasn't that bad. Or 27-15 going into halftime, which Washington could have possibly had a chance to come back from. It wasn't the end of the world, but then after that, Eagles took over, especially in that fourth quarter, scoring 21 points. But shout out to Jaden Daniels on an incredible rookie season. Fact that he brought Washington to the NFC Championship round, I think in like 20 years it's been. And better luck next time for Washington.
No doubt. I don't think there's anything to hang your head over if you're a Washington fan, part of this organization. The future is very bright, and it's so important for every team in the NFL, all 32. You need a quarterback. You need to find your guy for the future. We see this with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger retired.
Yep.
He brought the team 2 Super Bowls. It's been a constant search for that next franchise guy. Most people thought it was going to be Kenny Pickett when the Steelers selected him in the first round, 20th overall. He wasn't the guy. He got traded to the Eagles. He can potentially win a ring as Jalen Hurts' backup. So we'll see what the future looks for him. But nothing to hang their heads over. And an underrated aspect of this game, Washington was playing catch-up the whole time.
Yeah.
And when you're playing catch-up, you become one-dimensional on offense, which means you're passing the ball a lot. And they weren't really able to develop a run game. Brian Robinson, 11 carries for 36 yards.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler, 8 carries for 15 yards. So
Ooh.
there wasn't any of that exposure to the run game where you can put in a play-action pass or just have everything at your disposal. And on the other hand, the Philadelphia Eagles, they have that with Saquon Barkley. When Saquon is rushing well, Kellen Moore, the Eagles' offensive coordinator, can implement this rhythm passing aspect just to keep the defense on their toes. Saquon, 15 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns. Eagles backup. This is how dominant the Eagles O-line is. And this isn't taking away from anything that Eagles' third-string running back Will Shipley did. 4 carries, 77 yards, and a touchdown. This Eagles O-line is so dominant that I think if you put 99% of NFL running backs in that Eagles offense, they'll play well. Maybe not as well as Saquon, of course, but it just shows how well-built this team is. It's going to be very interesting to see how they match up with the Chiefs in a rematch. I don't know if I'm going to be picking against the Chiefs next week. Nick, I know we'll have to be making that prediction next week after I went 0 for 2 this week. But all is well. It should be a good game next week. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles. And now, we will be moving over to a team that seems they cannot be beaten in Patrick Mahomes, only 29 years old, on the verge of his 4th Super Bowl. The man's been unbelievable, and I know, a lot of people will say the refs, but Nick, at this point, can you blame the refs, or when you have this dominance year in and year out, I think you're just too good. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, there were some calls that just seemed like it shouldn't have happened. I was starting with the catch that happened at some point in the game where the ball seemed to hit the ground, and it was clear. It was visible that the ball hit the ground when Patrick Mahomes threw it to one of his receivers.
Yup, that was that was in the first or second quarter. It looked Patrick Mahomes. The Bills brought a blitz. Head coach Sean McDermott, he called the plays on defense. Patrick Mahomes rolling to his right off his back foot throws a prayer ball in the air to Xavier Worthy, who has the fastest 40-yard dash time in NFL history with a 4.21. With 2 defenders on him, Worthy makes the catch over 2 defenders. Instant replay, Gene Steratore, the head referee for CBS Sports, shows the replay. He thought it was going to be ruled incomplete after it looked like the tip of the ball was touching the ground. But according to NFL rules, he stated that if the receiver has control and it doesn't seem as if he's losing control as he's headed down towards the ground, it's a catch. But
that was that was the thing that I was hearing as well, was that apparently even though it hit the ground, the receiver maintained possession and control of the ball. So I guess I understand that. But, I mean, there's no doubt about it, though. The Chiefs are just unbelievable. And I know there's people out there who don't want to hear that, but, I mean, come on. It's true. This is a phenomenal team. This is the new dynasty in the NFL. They won 3 championships in 5 years. They are now in their 5th in 6 years, which is incredible to believe. It's like watching Derek Jeter in his prime, as he was in, I think he was in 5 World Series in his first 6 seasons. in the regular season, and I believe when he won his fourth championship in 2000, Derek Jeter was 26 and Patrick Mahomes is 29. So those kind of comparisons are incredible. But for Mahomes, obviously he's in a similar situation as Derek Jeter. He could three-peat. Only difference is no one has three-peated in the NFL, in the Super Bowl era. There has been a three-peat, but not in the Super Bowl era. For those who don't know, it was actually the Packers right before the Super Bowl era, Vince Lombardi, and he won 2 straight Super Bowls, as we know, but the year before it became the Super Bowl and it was just the championship game, they won it that year too. But no one has ever three-peated 3 years in a row during the Super Bowl era, and there is a very good chance we could witness that in the next week and a half from Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs.
No doubt, and I think you said it very well. We're experiencing uncharted territory. The Chiefs are attempting to do something that's never been done in the history of the NFL. And it's not a matter of they have a Tyreek Hill anymore. Tyreek Hill went to the Dolphins. They won 2 straight Super Bowls without him. The Kansas City Chiefs just coach so well, and they have an abundance of players. We see that. Xavier Worthy started off slow this season, but he's really turned it on and has became that Tyreek Hill for the Chiefs. 6 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. He's been that guy, your go-to guy, when he has to make a play. Besides Travis Kelce, who only finished with 2 receptions and 19 yards. We know what Travis Kelce is capable of. I think them two, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they are the next Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski in terms of if something's not there, they can go off script and just make a play and find that open space. And I think that's what Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski did so well together for so long, and we're seeing that again with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce in a different way. But on the Bills side, I know, and I said it last week, it's never quarterback versus quarterback, but we have to mention Josh Allen is now 0-4 versus Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. It just seems that they cannot find a way to win.
Yeah.
They can't, and Josh Allen did play well, I'll give him credit. Completed 22 passes, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Nick, what if you're Josh Allen in this Bills team, front office, Sean McDermott, what do you have to do? I mean, it seems like there's no end. It just seems like Josh Allen is in this nightmare that he's never going to wake up from.
Oh, God. You know, first of all, I am so sorry for Buffalo Bills fans. I mean, it's got to be the most painful thing to see your team, first of all, in the 90s go to 4 straight Super Bowls and lose. And now you have a team who can legitimately bring this franchise back to the Super Bowl, but they don't have Patrick Mahomes on their side of things. So when they go up against the Chiefs, especially in the playoffs, as you mentioned, things just haven't been going their way. And what's amazing is, on top of losing to the Chiefs 4 in a row in the playoffs in the Josh Allen era, they lost these 4 Super Bowls, which were also. And what's crazy is every time that the Bills have gone to the playoffs, their last 8 appearances in the playoffs, and I think this includes Super Bowl, but they're like 0-8, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they have been unable to win a road game in so long because it's just everything's just been going downhill for them once it gets to the playoffs. And granted, they won their 2 playoff games this year. They beat the Broncos by a score of 31-7, and then they won a tight matchup against the Ravens, and they were both home games, and then they went on the road to play the Chiefs, and it just didn't work out for them. But, I mean, it was definitely a great game for Josh Allen. And then, of course, running back James Cook, he had 13 carries for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns, so he had a pretty good game himself. And then, as far as receivers, Mac Hollins probably had the best game out of the Bills' receiving line he had 3 receptions and 73 yards, and he also had a touchdown of his own. But as Stephen A. Smith over the weekend, Josh Allen's biggest crime, he isn't Patrick Mahomes. So, I mean, the Bills seem like they have a great team. It's just a matter of what are they going to do to be able to find the problem.
100%. And you talk about something, every little thing matters in a football game. A 60-minute game, one bounce can determine your whole season. But here's the thing. The Bills got every bounce. 5 fumbles in this game. 4 by Buffalo. And then 1 by the Chiefs. I mean, Josh Allen, Ray Davis, Patrick Mahomes. Every single fumble was recovered by Buffalo. So it's not as if they were driving down the field, they made a mistake, threw an interception, forced the fumble. They recovered everything. So it's disappointing. It has to be so disappointing for Josh Allen because he just can't seem to beat Patrick Mahomes, and no one really can. The only active quarterback in the NFL who's defeated Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs is Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. But as we all know, the Bengals had one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and they fired their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to be an up-and-coming team this season, so we all know that. But it's just so disappointing. The Chiefs are an unbelievable team. We know what they're capable of. I think we are in for a very good matchup. It's going to be unbelievable. A rematch of Super Bowl 57. But the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Buffalo Bills 32-29 in Arrowhead Stadium in the AFC Championship. And next Sunday, a great matchup. We're going to have a good one. We will be previewing that next week. But we will be right back after a quick break. And when we get back, Nick and I will be going through a Yankees 2025 season preview as well as the current state of salary cap and whether it should be implemented in the MLB. So stay tuned. We will be right back. You are listening to the Sports Corner on 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. We are back here on the Sports Corner. I'm Sebastian Stratton alongside Nick Supa. You are listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. Nick and I just got done recapping the conference championship games in the NFL. Super Bowl 59 is set next week in New Orleans, the Eagles and Chiefs. But now we turn our attention to some Major League Baseball, specifically the New York Yankees 2025 season preview. A lot has gone down in this offseason, not necessarily over with a few weeks to go until pitchers and catchers report to spring training. But Nick, we've seen an abundance of moves by the Yankees after they lose superstar outfielder Juan Soto to the New York Mets. What have you liked so far from this offseason, and do you think it's enough for them to get back in the position where they were last year, the World Series versus the Los Angeles Dodgers?
I mean, I would definitely love to see our New York Yankees team get back into that state where they can make it to the World Series. And, I mean, against that LA Dodgers team, it would definitely be difficult to win as long as you make the right moves, of course. But I think it would be awesome to see another Yankees-Dodgers World Series. As far as the offseason of what the Yankees have been doing as far as making new moves and creating, adding new additions to the team, I think it's great, especially after losing, out of a shocker, losing Juan Soto to the Mets for 15 years, $765 million, which is insane. But the Yankees have definitely done great so far. They've added new additions like first baseman Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger, and then, of course, pitchers like Max Fried, which was, I believe, was the largest contract for a left-handed pitcher, was 8 years, $218 million, so a great addition as a starting pitcher. And then you go into the bullpen, you got Devin Williams as most likely their new closer in place of Luke Weaver, who will now be, I would believe, their 7th and 8th inning guy as the reliever towards the end. And then, of course, Fernando Cruz, another addition into the bullpen. So great job to the Yankees so far with what they've been doing. I mean, of course, there's a little under a month left until spring training. I would like to see if they could get a third baseman, perhaps. But if not, I'm sure they'll try to move some players around. I mean, I think it would be cool. Like, it would probably be the best thing if they either kept Jazz at third or moved him to second and got somebody like DJ LeMahieu or Oswaldo Cabrera to be in third base. But overall, great job in the offseason after losing a top-notch player in the MLB.
Unquestionably. And I think it's very easy, if you are Yankees owner Hal Steinbrenner, Yankees general manager Brian Cashman, to get discouraged when you throw all of this money out at Juan Soto. And as you said, 15 years, $765 million, the largest contract in North American sports history. It's very easy to get discouraged, as well as losing your second baseman, Gleyber Torres, who had an up-and-down season with the Yankees. Once the Yankees moved him into that leadoff role, he thrived, but he signed a 1-year, $15 million deal with the Detroit Tigers. Clay Holmes also goes to the other side of New York, 3 years, $38 million with the Mets. And then Tommy Kahnle yesterday signed with the Tigers, a young and thriving team. They are going to be someone we talk about soon on the show when we preview more MLB teams. But it's very easy to get discouraged. And one thing, Nick, that I love you touched up on, Fernando Cruz, I believe is the most underrated signing maybe in the MLB this offseason. And when I say underrated, I really mean that. And to put this into perspective, Cruz was traded from the Reds to the Yankees on December 20th of last year for catcher Jose Trevino. We all love Trevi, but so long. I think he'll do well with the Reds. Didn't do too much with the bat to really warrant a spot over Austin Wells, the lefty bat. We all know that short porch at Yankee Stadium is like hitter's gold. So I think a lefty in Wells is going to thrive there. But Fernando Cruz, most of his major league career, he made his debut he was older, 30, 31, I believe. But a 5 ERA. But we all know what Yankees pitching coach Matt Blake can do if you give him some talent. And we saw that with Luke Weaver. Not to say that Luke Weaver was a nobody, but he was a pitcher who really didn't warrant consideration when you looked at the top guys in the MLB. He comes to the Yankees from the Reds as well, and he dominates. He's so good, he takes over Clay Holmes in that closer role, and he becomes the Yankees guy that Aaron Boone showed that he will go to for multiple innings, especially in the playoffs. He's a guy, whether that's Devin Williams, as you said, or Luke Weaver in that closer role, the Yankees have their 8th and 9th inning guys set up. But back to Fernando Cruz, 14 strikeouts per 9 in 2024, and he's under control through 2029. But here's the enticing part about Cruz. He has one of the nastiest splitters in the MLB. If you go on YouTube and look up Fernando Cruz highlights, this thing just drops off the table. He really is a pleasure to watch, and I'm sure that Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone saw that potential, and he's a guy that he's a low risk because you have other top leverage guys, Jake Cousins, Ian Hamilton, Jonathan Loáisiga, who is expected to return in late April, early May with a flexor strain. And when you have an upper 90s fastball paired with a nasty splitter and a dirty slider, I think all things are possible. So I am very excited to see what the Yankees do on that side of the bullpen. But again, we talked about it last week. The Yankees bullpen has all righties. And I am an advocate for the Yankees re-signing Tim Hill. And I know we will get to salary cap in a little bit. But of course, as we go into the show and I'm walking into studio with you, Nick, what do I get on my phone from beat reporter Jeff Passan? The Los Angeles Dodgers are interested in left-handed pitcher Tim Hill.
No.
So that's another story that we are going to get to. But, man, this Yankees team, they've done well. I give credit to Brian Cashman, but I don't think they're done, and we will get to that. They definitely need a lefty. Whether it's Tim Hill or some other piece, we will get to that. But looking at the starting rotation, there's a lot of drama going on with this rotation. Currently, the starting rotation projects as this. Your ace pitcher is going to be Garrett Cole, righty, unbelievable guy. He has so much poise and precision when he's on the mound. Max Fried, recently acquired from the Atlanta Braves. Carlos Rodon is your third pitcher. Luis Eel, another exciting prospect to watch. If he gets his control underway, that upper 90s fastball paired with that slider, it's almost unhittable. Clark Schmidt is perfectly fine as your fifth reliever, but Marcus Stroman is currently lined up as your sixth starting pitcher, which is not really heard of in the MLB. For the most part, each MLB team carries 5 starting pitchers that go through a rotation. If there's an injury, they might go to 6, but Marcus Stroman doesn't seem to be pleased about hearing his name in trade rumors, as 2 days ago he recently took all his Yankees pictures and posts out of his biography on Instagram, unfollowed the Yankees on Instagram. Nick, the Yankees have a little bit of a situation here with Marcus Stroman. What do they do?
Personally, as you mentioned, it's not often that you have a 6-pitcher rotation. I think what they have without Marcus Stroman, Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Luis Eel, Clark Schmidt, I think that's a great 5-man rotation. I don't think they really need Marcus Stroman. Granted, in the beginning of the season, I thought he did pretty well, but then as the season got deeper and it got closer to the playoffs, he just seemed to go downhill a little bit. But I personally think it's time to part ways with Marcus Stroman, because I think what they have right there with that 5-man rotation is perfect. Having 3 righties and 2 lefties, I think it's perfectly balanced. You're mixing it in every day, and I think that would work better for them if Marcus Stroman was on the list to go to a different team.
I agree, and you brought up a great point before. Third base. If we're looking at the Yankees' projected starting lineup right now, that's a spot that they really don't have as much clarity as they do at the other positions. And the other day, Aaron Boone, speaking in a press conference, stated that it is 100%, barring an unexpected trade, that I still believe they should go out and get Alex Bregman. As I said, Jeff Passan reported that we're about 3 weeks away from spring training, and this guy still isn't signed.
Yeah.
The Yankees can swoop in there, make an offer. If he says no, all right, maybe he'll go to a Tigers, because the Tigers have shown interest. But I always think it's worth an opportunity. But
100%.
Aaron Boone said that it's going to be a 3-way battle between veteran DJ LeMahieu and up-and-coming players Oswaldo Cabrera and Oswald Peraza. 3 very different players in terms of age. LeMahieu is getting up there, 36 years old. He had a career-worst 2024 season. 204 batting average, 41 hits in limited playing time, and the pop was just gone. 2 home runs, and you hate to see that from a guy who was a Silver Slugger Award winner with the Yankees and the Colorado Rockies, and he mainly hit in the upper 200s and the low 3s for a majority of his career. And then you have Oswaldo Cabrera, who saw the most big league time out of the 3 in 2024, and I thought he did very, very well in limited playing time. 247 batting average, 74 hits, 47 runs scored, and a little bit of pop. A switch hitter who has shown that he can get that short porch or drive a double into the gap, and he's pretty solid defensively. So, in my opinion, I think he's the front runner for that third base job right now. And then the last guy you have in competition is Oswald Peraza, who spent his entirety of the 2024 season in the minor leagues, and he did well. 243 batting average, 90 hits, and 16 home runs. Love the pop from there. But, Nick, looking at this 3-way competition, one guy is going to have to beat out the other 2. So, what are you looking forward to in spring training from third base to solidify the last position for the Yankees that needs to be solidified?
I definitely agree with everything that you said, Sebastian. And as far as who I think should get the third base spot, obviously, I love DJ LeMahieu. I think he was fantastic with the Yankees, but as you mentioned, of course, players, they get older. He's in his late 30s now, So, and as you mentioned, he just came off of his worst year, but I think he also had an injury. He was dealing with an injury, and that's what happens. You get injured, and then you're out for some of the season, a majority of the season, or sometimes it's the entire season, which is just unlucky. But for DJ LeMahieu, it's horrible, of course, to see them get older, but I would try to give him a chance at least in the beginning of the season to just show the man some respect. You see if he still has it, and then if it seems like he doesn't have it after a couple of weeks, then switch him in to put in Oswaldo Cabrera, and I think he's been great with the Yankees as far as his defense. He's been incredible at third base, and he does have good pop when he gets a good swing on that baseball. So that would definitely be my top two for me. And then, of course, Oswald Peraza, we'll see if he'll get some more time in the major leagues. Great job in the minors for him. And if he gets a chance in the major leagues, I think, I obviously we won't know until he actually steps into the box and starts swinging, and when he's on the defensive side of things, how his glove will be. But that's how I see the third base situation for the Yankees.
I think you put it very well. And one guy that I am looking at when we transfer to this starting lineup in its totality is Paul Goldschmidt. A lot of people did not like this move. I am a huge fan of this. I think people forget Paul Goldschmidt doesn't have to be the guy in New York. He just has to be a supporting cast, a piece to go along with the big three, if you want to call it: Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, Giancarlo Stanton. People forget this is a former MVP, and I know, he's 37 years old, but he hit 22 home runs last season, 4 straight years with 22 home runs, which includes 35 home runs just 3 years ago. So Paul Goldschmidt has shown that he can have this pop in his bat and provide stability at a position which has been a lot of injuries. Anthony Rizzo went down with an injury last season. So I think that Paul Goldschmidt, with that veteran presence, is a guy that you can add to the lineup. Maybe not in that 3 or 4 spot where he's commonly been hitting, but looking at the Yankees' projected starting lineup according to Fangraphs, you have Anthony Volpe, Chisholm, Judge, Goldschmidt, Bellinger, Stanton, Wells, Dominguez, and Oswaldo Cabrera. Me personally, I think that just looking at Goldschmidt specifically, I think he's a guy that you insert maybe in that 6th spot, and then you have Jazz Chisholm sandwiched between Stanton and Goldschmidt, and then maybe, according to Aaron Boone, it's going to be Jason Dominguez or Jazz Chisholm in that leadoff spot. Me personally, I think the Yankees should go Jason Dominguez. But Nick, before we move on to salary cap to finish off the show, what are your thoughts on the current lineup so far?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would like to see Paul Goldschmidt, or not Paul Goldschmidt. I would like to see Giancarlo Stanton get boosted from the 6th to the 4th spot, which is where he was last year. He was their cleanup hitter, and I think that would definitely be the best move for that, because he is, let's face it, he's by far their strongest hitter in the lineup, so he's the best guy to put in that 4th spot to clean up the bases, whoever's on there. And as far as the rest of the lineup, I think Aaron Judge is great in the 3rd spot. I think that's where he was last season, or second spot, or no, it was 3rd. I think that's great. And Volpe starting off, we'll see how it goes. Last year, I believe when the season started, he was at 5th or 6th in the lineup, and he batted over 400 in the first month, I believe it was, in the 2024 season, and then he got boosted to the leadoff guy, and he was still hitting, but not nearly as high of a level as he was in the beginning of the season. But he was getting good clutch hits. Obviously, if that is what Aaron Boone is going for, try it out and see what happens at this point. but those are the main things that I'm really looking at. The bottom of the lineup, Austin Wells, Jason Dominguez, and Oswaldo Cabrera, I'd say that's pretty fine right there. Other than that, though, I see a few changes in this projected lineup, but other than that, I think it's pretty good right now.
For sure. I think there's a lot to be seen with this Yankees team. A lot of questions that should be answered by the time spring training and April rolls around. And they're looking to cap off on a great season last year. They lost in warranted fashion to the Los Angeles Dodgers in 5 games in the World Series. But for the last 10 minutes of our show, we will move on to salary cap. Something that when you look at the 4 major sports organizations in the world, the MLB, the NHL, NFL, and NBA, the MLB does not have a salary cap. They have something called a luxury tax, which means that teams that exceed a predetermined payroll threshold are subject to a competitive balance tax. And according to the official Major League Baseball rulebook, it states, those who carry payrolls above that threshold are taxed on each dollar above the threshold, with the tax rate increasing based on the number of consecutive years a club has exceeded the threshold. Nick, I'll leave it up to you. Does the MLB need a salary cap?
100%. We have seen contracts that have been worth more than an entire franchise, and it's absolutely insane. And as we just mentioned earlier, Juan Soto's deal with the Mets, 15 years for $765 million. And what's crazy about that is I wanted to do some research on this, and I happened to find something that was very interesting. The Oakland Athletics, so as a franchise, they are valued at $1.2 billion in 2024, which is pretty good. However, the team's owner, John Fisher, was exploring the possibility of selling a minority stake in the team. This was he was looking to sell it for approximately $500 million. That minority stake is $265 million cheaper than Juan Soto's contract, which is insane. And then, of course, originally when the Dodgers signed Shohei Ohtani, it was 10 years for $700 million. Even Aaron Judge's contract, $360 million for 9 years, which obviously is much lower than Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani's deal. But to answer your question, Sebastian, absolutely, the MLB needs to have a salary cap.
Here's my thing when it comes to salary cap, and Nick, I think you said it perfectly. The Dodgers are spending so much money, most of these big market teams do. But here's my issue. If you implement a salary cap, are these low market teams going to go out there and get their players? I want to use an example, the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is a young team with potential to make noise in the National League Central, surrounded by superstar ace pitcher Paul Skeens out of Louisiana State University. Even before, to note, all these teams are spending this much money. Come on, the Mets $765 million. No one was really doing this in 1998. And the reason I bring this up is the Pirates have posted a losing record in 20 consecutive seasons from 1993 to 2012, a record streak in both the MLB as well as the 4 major North American professional sports leagues. And here's my issue. The Pirates have a good pitching rotation implemented with Paul Skeens to lead the National League Central, but there has been an unwillingness by Pirates owner Bob Nutting to go out there and surround Skeens with the guys that are needed to make noise and take over these potential top teams like the Dodgers. And I'm not saying you have to go out there and give someone a $765 million contract, but the least you can do is add some bats in that lineup to show that you do care. And for those who don't know, PNC Park, the home ballpark of the Pittsburgh Pirates, is one of the most beautiful stadiums in the MLB, with the background of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and right next door is Acrisure Stadium, which is the home football field for the Pittsburgh Steelers of the NFL. So there just hasn't been that kind of connection with the Pirates and the organization, which last year after the Pirates missed the playoffs and haven't won a playoff game in 12 years since 2013, fans went to the streets with signs and said, "Fire Nutting." They don't want this anymore. There were chants going on at PNC Park towards the end of the season that they can't do this. So I agree that there needs to be something that has to be done in terms of salary cap. But again, if this happens and it's implemented, how do we know the Pirates are going to do that? And as you said with the Athletics, I'll at least give them a little bit of credit. They went out there and got a good pitcher who pitched for the Yankees and the Mets in Luis Severino. He was great. Upper 90s fastball, good slider, good changeup. He's a guy that's going to lead that staff and hopefully bring something to an AL West division that always seems to be dominated by the Houston Astros. But, Nick, I'll give your take. If salary cap is implemented, are we sure that these low market teams are going to go out there and even get these players?
That's the thing, because nowadays it seems like baseball is a money game. So players are going to be looking for the most money that they can get. So teams like the Oakland A's or the Pittsburgh Pirates, these kind of lower budget teams compared to the New York Yankees, the LA Dodgers, and the New York Mets, I think it's going to be more difficult for them, especially if they have a lower budget in their pocket, because players just they want all the money that they can get. And in my opinion, I think it's ridiculous. I think players should just play for the love of the game. And it's because of this kind of insanity that it's difficult for teams with a lower budget to create a powerhouse team, because a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of players just are looking for they're looking for the paycheck, they're looking for the money. But I think for the Pirates, though, obviously, as you mentioned, it's been 20 straight years that they've had a losing record. So whether it's the ownership, the management, whatever it is, it hasn't been working since 1993. From 1993 to 2012. But it's something that definitely needs to be talked about with the commissioner of the MLB, in Rob Manfred, and just all the franchises. It needs to be discussed for sure. Salary cap is a major thing that people have been talking about for years in baseball, and it really needs to be brought to their attention, because it's crazy how much money these players are getting paid nowadays.
No doubt. I think you put it very well. And Nick, before we finish up our show, I want you to give the listeners that are tuning in a little background of what a team such as the Dodgers, what are they doing with their active payroll? I mean, we've seen so much deliberation and just wanting to spend. Give it up. Let's see it.
Well, what I find amazing is the Dodgers have been super successful. First of all, they won the World Series, and then they just have been the talk of free agency and during the off season of just having all this money in their pocket to spend, and spend some more. They have 4 players right now on their active roster going into 2025 that are getting paid over $27 million in the year, and 12 that are getting over $10 million. And I won't say all 12 of the players that are getting paid over the $10 million mark, but the top 4 on this list is Freddie Freeman, who was the 2024 World Series MVP. Sorry, Yankee fans, but it is true. $27 million he's getting paid. And then, of course, another one of the biggest stars on the team, Mookie Betts, $30 million. A newer addition in their pitching rotation, Tyler Glasnow from the Tampa Bay Rays, $32.5 million. And then their newest starting pitcher addition in Blake Snell, who's getting paid the most in 2025 at $36.4 million, which is absolutely insane. Right there will tell you the Dodgers got a lot of money.
Nick, you said it so well, and you really described it for the listeners out there that the Dodgers really are doing so much. It's going to be very interesting to see how this MLB season and the NFL Super Bowl take shape next week, which we will be previewing right here next Thursday, 9 a.m. on 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. I'm your host, Sebastian Stratton. Joined alongside me, the very amazing Nick Supa.
Thank you, Sebastian.
We will see you next time. Have a great Thursday.